Hi, my name is Angela Kemble. I'm the Executive Director of Northwest Central FASD Network. I'm here to present, along with my coworker Donna Kristiansen, the RCMP FASD training program. Before I get started, I'd like to thank you all for the service that you provide. I know COVID has been making things a lot more difficult for you, as they have for us, and we just wanted to give you a great big thank you for all that you do. So today we are going to be doing the FASD training. FASD stands for Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. So fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is a condition which occurs when a pregnant woman consumes alcohol, and that alcohol actually flows through the placental barrier in a 1-to-1 ratio. So everything that a mother drinks goes directly to the fetus, and this alcohol can cause brain damage and physical impacts to the body as well. Alcohol is one of the most dangerous toxins that can occur to a fetus. There are other toxins out there, such as thalidomide and Accutane. Of course, there's various drugs and stuff. What they don't do is cross the placental barrier at the same ratio as alcohol, so alcohol is the most dangerous one. So before we're able to diagnose for an FASD, one of the things we need first is prenatal alcohol confirmation. We can get this from the biological mom's family, or through records. So we can't move forward on an assessment for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder without that PAE, because there's a lot of things out there that mimic fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. First, I'd like to go into what a standard drink is. A standard drink, for the most part, is 1 ounce of alcohol, hard spirits, 1 drink of beer, 1 bottle of beer or a cooler, 5 ounces of wine. Now, most people don't use jiggers, or they free pour, so the actual amount of alcohol they're consuming is quite a bit more than what they think they are. So for instance, in a red Solo cup, which actually has lines on it so to help you determine what the right amount of alcohol is, most people will free pour probably 2 to 3 times more alcohol into that cup and then top it up with their mixer, not realizing that that 1 drink that they've consumed is actually equivalent to 3 standard alcoholic drinks. Now, alcohol has the ability to affect the fetus at all levels of development, right from the beginning of conception. So as soon as that sperm meets that egg and that fetus starts growing, alcohol has the potential to impact it. Now, at what time the alcohol is consumed during the development of that fetus is what that alcohol will affect. So in the beginning, spine and stuff are developed, so that's where the alcohol is going to impact. And as eyes grow, ears, nose, mouth, that has the potential to be impacted, so on and so forth. So this isn't just a brain disorder. It can very well be a whole body disorder, because alcohol has the ability to impact at all stages of development. In order to do an FASD assessment, we can't rely just on 1 professional. We need to have a multidisciplinary team of several professionals. That includes a doctor, this is for adults, so a doctor, an occupational therapist, a psychologist, and sometimes a speech-language pathologist. For a child or youth, we opt out for the occupational therapist and ensure that we have a speech-language pathologist, a child psychologist, and a doctor. These professionals work together to do their individual assessments, and then they come together to put that information together and form the diagnosis. There are 10 domains of the brain that are assessed during this period, and you need to be significantly impacted, that's the bottom 2 percentile, in 3 of those domains. So this is not a light diagnosis, and it's a very difficult diagnosis to get. So to be impacted severely, again, bottom 2 percentile, meaning out of 100 people, 98% or 98 people are better at that skill than you are. And you have to be impacted severely in 3 of those domains. So again, this is a severe disability. So FASD is not to be taken lightly. It's not a diagnosis that is the flavor of the month, that everybody and anybody just has FASD if they're acting a little strangely. It's not true. It is a diagnosis for people who are severely brain damaged. The primary disabilities that occur with FASD can include, and this is not limited to, anywhere from lower intelligence, learning disabilities. Their social skills can be impacted. That's one of the behaviors that you might notice is a underdeveloped social skill. Their language can be impacted. Their cognition, their ability to understand what you're saying or understand what they're reading can be impacted. Their reasoning abilities, what's right, what's wrong, that type of thing can also be impacted. Their attention, many people with FASD are diagnosed also with attention deficit disorder. They can have poor motor skills. This is where the alcohol has impacted their physical bodies. So they might not be able to have very many fine motor skills or do things like ride a bike because that requires balance, or kick a ball or catch a ball. Their executive functioning, that's that ability to make decisions, remember tasks that need to be done, which is why routine is very important because that helps the memory. Again, memory can be something that's impacted, and we do see a lot of people come through our clinics whose memory is impacted. Adaptive behavior, so that ability to get used to behaviors and to be able to change up their behaviors to accommodate a situation is just not there. They've learned it one way and it's very difficult for them to learn it in a different way. And also sensory integration, so things like flashing lights, loud noises, even touch. They might have a very high pain tolerance, so something that would hurt you and I, they might not even notice. So they could have unexplained bruises or maybe not even realize that they've broken an arm. Another aspect, but we see it less often, is a lower pain tolerance where everything hurts. So even from a hug can feel like too deep of a pressure for them. So these are things to notice, and again, things that'll probably come out in their behavior that'll help you to notice that something's a little off and hopefully get you thinking that maybe I need to dig a little deeper into why this person is acting this way. So I'd now like to hand the platform over to Donna Kristiansen, who is going to start discussing the adverse outcomes of FASD.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to talk a little bit more about adverse outcomes when we talk about individuals with FASD or suspected with FASD. As you can see from the slide there's many adverse outcomes. We look at mental health, that includes anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues, disrupted schooling. It could be that they're not successful in school. They've never received that support. So rather than struggling to go through it, often they leave school at an early age, so not completing the school. Also might be involved with inappropriate sexual behavior, and that's because of just not having those social skills that are required to be able to read those like non-verbals and things like that. So he's like, he looks at, oh, I think she digs me type thing, and maybe not. And so just getting a misinformation, and that information isn't traveling to the brain in regards to that. We also look at all those issues about homelessness, because we realize that individuals maybe don't know their story in the background. And so with the FASD, what else has gone on in their life? Was there issues with children's services? Was it like a cycle of their family that maybe also may be impacted? Because often we find that that happens as well. So it could be involved with children's services, there could have been violence within the home, all those stories that we maybe don't have up front. And then when we look at, when Angela was saying about the executive functioning, and so all these other pieces of, living independently, being able to attain employment. Often they get the jobs, but it's keeping those jobs that's always a challenge. With the homelessness, being able to budget and things like that. That executive functioning, I like to kind of have it resemble of, say, when you're driving and you're going down the road, you got to keep an eye on the lights, people, are they jaywalking, going across, the speed of the vehicles going, and just all that information coming in. And that's like that executive functioning. However, somebody with FASD, they might be really tired driving at night in the fog. And that's how we like to maybe look at it. It's like there's some other factors so that they're able to, how are they able to process all that information? Processing speed sometimes can be a challenge, so they're maybe not getting that information as quick. And so it might be, and I'm going to give this as an example, as if you see somebody and you maybe want to stop them to ask a question or There might be just some reason that you may want to question that individual. But with that executive functioning and being able to process the information, it's like that fight or flight, because you start having a conversation with them and they start freaking out and might become overwhelmed. And instead of being able to process that information quicker, they end up taking off because they are just fearful. And it could be previous experiences as well with the law that they end up running rather than having a conversation. When I talk about that processing speed, we talk about receiving that information, processing. Everybody processes that information at different rates. It doesn't mean that that individual isn't able to understand, but it just might take them a little bit longer. So when you're having questioning and things like that, it might be able to ask a question, pause, and wait for a response rather than say, did you hear me? Or, going back right away. So it just taking that time to have that conversation is always a good strategy. We look at, yes, trouble with the law. Often, because of all these other issues that maybe when you encounter somebody that, through justice or through an encounter on the street or whatever the situation may be that you're dealing with, you have to recognize that maybe there's all these other things. And you may not have the time to say, oh, geez, let me think. I should go through the checklist. Maybe they've had a bad history, or maybe, these things. We recognize that you're maybe not able to do that. But maybe if you've got somebody who's maybe gone through that revolving door, it might be an idea that maybe if they've been there 2 or 3 times in a row, it's like, okay, what's the deal with this? And whether it's somebody that can maybe ask a couple additional questions as you're questioning that individual. Also, we have, of course, a big one is addictions. With the mental health, often there's self-medication or just being in the wrong place, the wrong time. Addictions and mental health always seem to go, they're best friends. They go hand in hand. And so a lot of involvement with the law is because of addictions. And whether it is being caught holding the bag, whether it is being in the wrong place at the wrong time, with addictions, making really, really bad decisions when somebody is either intoxicated or high. When we talk about consuming alcohol that Angela was mentioning, it's also not being able to have that off switch. So somebody may be able to have, a couple drinks and say, oh, I think I've had enough. I've had my 2 drinks. That's good. I better get going. Many individuals maybe don't have that ability to have that off switch, especially if addictions are a piece of that. It's like we're going in, we're going all the way. And a lot of issues are caused because of that. And another big thing is when we talk about this addiction is the crystal meth. With the studies that are going on now and how it also impacts the mental health in regards to schizophrenia type of behavior or psychosis. And so it's difficult to be able to understand, okay, is it because of the addictions, or is this a significant other piece of mental health that is not going to go away? And so along with those addictions and everything else, then we go to the unplanned pregnancies, maybe not making those decisions, back to the executive functioning, that planning, that organizing, all that, those pieces, and knowing those consequences. So often those pregnancies may be unplanned. And also because FASD is a whole body disorder, we're not only looking at the brain, but we're looking at other physical pieces like the organs, like the heart, the lungs, thyroid, all those pieces could be impacted as well. Along with the risky behavior also is an early death on occasions because of lack of supports, lack, like I say, of addictions, involvement with the law, risky behavior. They can be in some very difficult situations. And then we go to parenting. Many individuals, because they've had unplanned pregnancies, and then they are there, and they are parents, but not having the support in order to learn to be a stable parent. It's difficult to be a stable parent where you maybe not have any income coming in, when you're dealing with homelessness, when you're dealing with some of those addictions, and the lack of supports and finances just has things tumble down, and then the cycle starts again. If we look at this chart here, or this slide, when we look at the actual age, where the expressive language is, and then we look at some of those other things like the reading ability, it's like pretty well average. But then when we look at those crucial skills, like the living skills, the concept of time and money, the social skills, all those pieces, they start going down at a younger age. And so with somebody who's 18, when we're looking at the ability to manage money and things like that, we're looking at an age 8. And I say, well, maybe look at if you look at your own family, your own children, and it's like if you've got an 8-year-old, would you have the expectation that they would be able to manage their life like an adult? Would there be an expectation that they should be able to get a job and keep it, budget, manage their apartment or household with no problem? And obviously not. And so when we look at some of those behaviors, are they intentional or unintentional? Often we always say, like, somebody, whether it's in school or different settings, they would rather look like the tough guy or the big guy or the guy who doesn't really care, rather than somebody that looks ignorant or doesn't understand. So in plain language, he'd rather look mean rather than stupid. And that often causes many issues, especially when we're looking at justice. So going in and having questions being asked of them and maybe not being able to process that information very well, having some struggles with some executive functioning. So rather than saying, well, I don't really know, it might be, screw you, cop, I'm not telling you nothing, I don't know how to tell you, I got my rights, or whatever. And just maybe deflecting and not being able to have a conversation. When we look at that fight or flight, that's another piece that individuals may become a little bit overwhelmed with the information, the situation. And so it could be, like they say, becoming belligerent or arguing or that fighting type of attitude or arguing, or just taking off. So rather than just becoming so overwhelmed and not knowing what to do in a situation, even though they may not be guilty of anything at that particular time, they run, which obviously makes them look fairly suspicious, running away. But, it's that fight or flight type of piece as well. And you have to remember, by the time you meet these guys, they typically have been failed over and over and over again. And that's when I say that story, that experience that they've had, their involvement with whether it be service providers, whether it be the children's services system, whether it be in a family system that maybe wasn't very stable and secure, and just falling through those cracks, those gaps. And so we always want to be mindful of that behavior. And another thing is what we want to do is we want to be able to continue that relationship with justice and RCMP so that we can have conversations, because we recognize that you're not going to be able to, in a crisis situation, be able to ponder and say, gee, I wonder if FASD is going to be the issue here. Typically, you're having to make very quick decisions, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not available. If there's somebody that comes along, that may be a frequent flyer that you'd say, maybe we should give somebody a call. It's all about relationships and keeping those connections open, whether it be us, whether it's community services, that we can always provide information, because at the end of the day, we want to make we want to make your job easier. We want to be able to say we can help with this individual because we want to be able to do the prevention piece, the prevention of recidivism, the prevention of homelessness, the prevention of any more FASD births. So we can't change somebody who has FASD. However, if we're able to modify the environment, if we're able to put supports in there, whether it's financial supports to help them connect to services like assured income for the handicapped, whether it's to be able to help them at least with income support. So those financial pieces, so that we're looking at less homelessness. We're looking at less becoming involved with maybe theft or robbery or desperation just to be able to make ends meet. So with that, when we look at the criminal, it's like that impulsivity and that lack of control, that poor memory. So when they're offending, what are they offending for? Is it a breach because they were picked up on another thing, but they never showed up for court? Well, that comes in back to that executive functioning, that working memory, that memory. Did they remember they had court that day? Did they actually keep the paper? Did they lose it somewhere? Did they even understand when and how they were supposed to come back? Do they have a phone? Are they able to phone? Or are they just like, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything? That's why I say it's so key to have those supports or somebody to give those reminders and things like that. And, just having a sense of belonging. Because they've gone through such negative life experiences, and maybe those social skills are impacted, and so through life, maybe those relationships that they have may not be the healthiest relationships. So being a sense of belonging to a group. Well, the group may not be the best group. Maybe it's a gang affiliation. But they are part of the team. But however, being part of that affiliation, being part of that team, he might be the guy that says, hey, you've got an apartment, can we just keep a few of these goods over your place? Or, we're just going to do a little bit of job here. Do you know how to drive? Can you maybe drive the car? Or could you just go into this house and grab this for me? And so being able to be exploited, whether, and also could be sexual exploitation as well, because like I say, when you're lacking supports, you're lacking any type of financial supports to be able to have a house, a place to stay, desperate times, maybe some desperate measures. So not only that, but 75% of men that have been assessed for FASD were children in care. So that's also a very significant number. So when we look at some of these numbers and some of this story, the history of these individuals, it's just asking those questions and maybe just going a little bit step further of us saying, okay, what's this individual story? And when they start telling their story, it's like, oh, okay, that's, that may be an issue. Okay, they've come from, they've been in care, they've had very negative school experience, never completed school. They might be in their in the mid-20s and have never actually held down a job. So those are kind of red flags that we look at with somebody who may have an FASD, even if they haven't been diagnosed. And also we have the individuals that have a diagnosis of FASD. But when they're being picked up in a bad situation, they're not going to come and say, I have FASD. So it might take a while to figure that out before they go through the system.
Another very important thing, and I know this is important for your jobs as well, is you want to ensure that they understand what you're saying. I know that needs to go into your report. It could be used in courts later on. So asking them if they understand, if they comprehend. A person with FASD, as Donna said, doesn't want to look stupid. So they're going to sit there and nod their heads saying they understand when you say, do you understand that? Chances are they're going to nod their heads and really not have understood anything you said. So if you slow it down and then ask them, tell me in your own words what I just said. Or what do you think of what I just said? Those types of questions. Or repeat back to me what I just said. If it turns out they're repeating it in exactly the same words you gave them, that's a mimic and that is not a sign of understanding. If you need more information than a simple yes or no, you're going to need to ask a question that is open-ended. Otherwise, you are going to get a simple yes or no. So asking questions like, where were you yesterday? As opposed to, were you there? Then they can actually, it opens up their brain to look for an answer as opposed to just slamming on a yes or no right away. Because they're scared and they want to get out of there. So they're going to say yes or no to everything. Also, memory plays a big part in communication. If they're unable to remember what they did yesterday, asking them questions broken down into, okay, so, yesterday morning, where were you? Okay, what did you do right after that? As opposed to asking a very involved question of, where were you yesterday and what were you doing? So one, that's two directives. You're asking them two separate questions, which could be difficult for them to comprehend. But it also, that's a lot of information of what you did through that entire day. So helping them to break it down and think of it in stages is going to help a lot to getting to the answers that you need. So the court, in the last few years, has very much recognized FASD, and we have done training with them, as many of the networks across the province done training with the court system. The Ministry of Solicitor and Justice and Solicitor General has also done a lot of training with FASD. So one of the things the courts do often is, if somebody's behaviors within the confines of the crime do seem to look FASD related, they will often ask this person to go for an FASD assessment before sentencing is going to occur. They also are very good now about giving a person with an FASD probation orders that are simplified and placed in or put in a language that are easy to understand. And last but not least, I'd like you to remember that fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is not going to go away. You can't fix it. There's no drug out there. There's no magic wand that's going to take it away. These people have to live with FASD for the rest of their lives. It is not a death sentence. It is not full of doom and gloom. People with FASD can have lots of success. To do that, however, they generally need supports, and supports in the domains that the FASD assessment has pointed out that they need those supports for. We're not asking you to do anything different right away. We understand that you can't do that. Most of the situations you're involved in require immediate action. What we're asking is that after that has occurred, especially if somebody keeps coming back and is involved with you, is have a deeper look and maybe reach out and talk to us at the FASD network. Most of you have somebody who works locally for us. We're definitely will be putting you in touch with them. Please give us a call and see if there's something that we can do to help you help them. Thank you for your time.
Why did you run?
Why did you chase me? Well, why did you taser me?
So Jeannie, do you have a place to live?
Yeah. I got my friend Richard, and he's a really great guy and a family man. Like, his mother lives with him. Yeah.
Oh, do you have any employment?
Well, actually, Richard is like a businessman. He has his own business, and he said that he would get me a job, and I would be able to work right away when I leave here.
Oh, it's just a one-man band. Well, these are the conditions of your probation and deferred custody. Don't lose this.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Ricky, where are you? I thought you were gonna come pick me up.
Yeah, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it today to pick you up or whatever.
What do you mean?
I'm staying at home and I don't know if you're allowed because my mom's been cracking the whip or whatever, so I don't even...
Let's go.
Oh, well, you're not gonna be coming over anytime soon, I guess. Well, whatever.
Ricky!
How are you today, ma'am?
Great! I'm just on my way to see my support worker.
Well, that's nice to hear. You have a good day now.